white supremacism is like one of the rarest things in this country.
It's happened to Alex Jones, Milo Yiannopoulos, Richard Spencer. The list goes on. All of these individuals were deplatformed or kicked off of different web services after those services deemed comments they made hateful, a characterization they all deny.
We are experiencing what we see as a wave of deplatforming right now. Oftentimes when we talk about deplatforming, we talk about someone losing their account on social media. But deplatforming can exist in many different ways.
Deplatforming isn't just limited to individuals. The tactic is also being used to silence extremist websites. Shortly before he allegedly murdered 22 people at a Walmart in El Paso, Texas, Patrick Crusius shared his manifesto to an obscure web forum called 8chan.
The website 8chan. That's where the suspected gunman in Saturday's attack
posted a 4-page anti-immigrant manifesto.
This wasn't the first time that an alleged mass shooter had posted a manifesto to 8chan. The individuals who allegedly carried out the Christchurch mosque shootings and the Poway synagogue shooting also posted their manifestos to 8chan. But this time the response to the shooting was different. Cloudflare, an internet infrastructure company, decided to deplatform or stop providing its services to 8chan, effectively shutting down the site, at least for now.
There are about 1 million users of 8chan. 8chan is an empty piece of paper for writing on.
In response to the takedown, 8chan's owner, Jim Watkins, posted this video to YouTube.
It is clearly a political move to remove 8chan from Cloudflare. It has forced a lot of people to find other places to talk.
Today, deplatforming is the most popular tactic to deal with extremist content online. But does it actually work?
It's not necessarily going to create a causal chain where we get rid of hate online. But what it does do is it disrupts this community of people that have been building over the last 5 years a culture of harm and harassment and incitement.
According to Professor Donovan, deplatforming might slow the growth and the impact of these websites, but it can't wipe their ideology away entirely. The individuals who carry out such attacks are not the lone wolves the media often portray them as, Donovan says, noting that their manifestos suggest they are part of a growing and global white supremacist movement.
When we say that they're lone wolves, what we're pointing to is that these are disaffected people who live in isolation and are coming out of nowhere to conduct this violence. Instead, the research is actually pointing to that these people are never alone, that they reach out online, they have a lot of questions. Mostly they look into white supremacist theories of how political parties and media are colluding to keep white people down.
It wasn't that long ago that Scott Ernest believed in that white nationalist narrative.
I got involved by accident. It was 2004, and I was just searching the internet. I'm not even sure what I was doing, just surfing. And I came across a blog.
Like many young extremists, Ernest was radicalized online.
Eventually, it did become a community thing. You get in there and you meet these people. And I mean, even if you don't necessarily like all of them, you know, you start feeling connected to them.
He eventually became a moderator on Stormfront, a popular white nationalist website.
It's for all white nationalists. So you could be a moderate, you could be extreme, you could be KKK, you could be NSM, National Socialist.
He says he began to distance himself from the movement as it became more violent.
You know, a lot of the movement actually believe in the mass shootings.
In an email to the Wall Street Journal, Stormfront's founder, Don Black, said, "We have always clearly stated that we do not tolerate any posts even suggesting illegal violence. Any such posts are immediately deleted by moderators and the user banned."
The first time I ever questioned why I was in the movement was when Anders Breivik shot a bunch of kids in Norway. That caught my eye because at some point previous to that, Anders Breivik had actually been on my Facebook friend list under the name of Andrew Berwick.
Breivik, who murdered 77 people in 2011, has since become an icon of sorts for white nationalists. On sites like 8chan, users have celebrated his kill count for years, and done so legally. That's because, vile or not, the racist and violent speech often found on sites like 8chan is protected under the First Amendment.
There's much discussion about social media, its implications, the harms done, and the question is posed, what should government do about social media?
Civil libertarians like John Samples are skeptical of any government reforms, arguing that regulation of speech will backfire and be abused.
We have very strong protections. And that's going to mean that there's not much government can do.
But that hasn't damped calls for reform. For her part, Professor Donovan would like to see legislation regulating the amplification of hate speech online.
Individuals who own websites are allowed to decide what stays and what goes. That is non-controversial. But when we run into the problem of scale, when that speech scales so that it is comparable to broadcast, when you have 50, 60,000 people that are looking at particular posts or videos online that contain racist speech, hate speech, harassment, incitement, then we have to come up with a schema related to amplification, like we did with broadcast radio, like we've done with television, that sets a different set of rules.
For decades now, radio and television stations have had to follow regulations meant to ensure they serve the public interest, based in part on their reach. Although the internet is different, Donovan says it's clear our current laws have not kept up with our technological advancements, and that perhaps we should consider a new framework.
You can say that kind of any regulation around what someone says online is protected, but I think that's clearly not right today.
The third way forward is already in the works. Zuckerberg announced that Facebook is creating an independent body that will review controversial content.
It's not clear to me that we want a private company to be making that kind of a fundamental decision about, what is political speech and how should that be regulated.
In a blog post addressing the El Paso shooter's manifesto, the chief executive of the web services company Cloudflare wrote that 8chan's lawlessness had contributed to multiple horrific tragedies, and as a result, Cloudflare would no longer be supporting the site. But Cloudflare's post also highlighted how some web service companies are being thrust reluctantly into the role of policing speech. Cloudflare wrote, "We continue to feel incredibly uncomfortable about playing the role of content arbiter, and we do not plan to exercise it often."